Houdini 21 has added a much easier way to bring VDBs into COPs. And to start with, all I did was make a sphere and add some UVs. I just need the UVs so that when I sample in UV space where the VDBs are, then I have a map to texture with and read or sample those values from in world space. So basically I've got the sphere with some UVs here, and then there is a new node, G to VDB here. And the nice thing is that they've added a transform 3D node here, and so you can move your VDBs around. And so all I did was just do a SOP invoke VDB from polygon. So I just took the polygon here and turned it into some VDBs, and then cheer to VDB. And then I need world position, because I have my, let's just template this. I need to get the position of this, the values of this VDB where it overlaps with this other object at its UVs. So I need world position. I could do it the old way here, or the sort of standard way in Houdini, where you raster your geometry and then get the world position, or org P here they call it, and then extrapolate boundaries. Instead, I made this OpenCL that I've mentioned it many times before. Just uses where am I in a triangle, barycentric space. I find it faster, and I get cleaner edges on the UVs. So that's why I'm using that, but you can use this other way. And so now what I want to be able to do is to be able to get sample the VDB values at that UV world position. So it's all it is. It's just 2 lines of code. I get in the world position here, and let's have a look at that on our sphere. So we'll just do this and pipe in our world position. And you can see RGB equals XYZ, and as I move it around, obviously, well, that's not the right one, sorry. Let's add another transform node here, and we'll add that to our actual geometry. And you can see here that as I move it around, the values aren't changing because I'm moving the original geo around. But if I pipe that into our map, now you can see that the values are actually changing. So that gives us RGB XYZ world position. So I'll just turn that off for now. And now we have it back at its original position. So I have world sample, and then in this code, so I get the world sample, and then what I do is I sample the VDB at that position, and I get values back. So here you can see I am sampling a float, and so we'll pipe this into our map here, and you can see that I'll just template this so we can see our VDB. And then I'll transform that. And you can see that as we intersect the VDB with the, and I did obviously fill interior of the VDB when I created a VDB out of it. You can see here that as it intersects with this, this surface, and I'm sampling the VDB from the world positions of that surface using its UV, I'm able to get VDB intersection. So obviously that's pretty useful to then spawn some texture maps or start some other visual effects at that point. And also you can do, like I've done in past examples, cumulative as well, so that as I move it, it actually accumulates the values and adds them up. You can use, you don't have to use the old method of using a SOP solver inside of COPS. You can use the new blocks to do that. And I think, yeah, we do that over here in a second. So that's the first example. Oh, I did make an HDA to make it a little bit easier. So let's plug that in. And so there is a position sample. Yes. There's a new position sample COP node inside of Houdini 21, and it's amazing. But if you look in it, it will sample layer to layer, layer to layer, and VDB to VDB. But I don't need that. I need to sample layer and VDB, so that type is not in here. So rather than sort of make an Uber node and adding my stuff into this and making a new node, I just made one that only does floats and vector VDBs. So we look inside of that. I don't know why I left those 3 nodes in there, but anyway, let's have a look at the basic code. So this reads float VDB, and then this one reads vector VDB. So it lets you switch between the two. So in this case, I only have a float VDB, so we can't really look at an example of it here. But let's move on to the next one. Here I am, and I'll just move this over because when I expand the flame, it's going to take a lot of space. So if we just do flame, there's a configure flame example. So that's all this is. It's just when you add this, you get this ready-made network for you, which is wonderful. And so that's all this is. And all I'm extracting out of that is the float density and the vector velocity. So let's close that up. And so you can see that here. If I look at them, I've got, I'll just play this. That's the velocity field and the vector, and then this is the float flame field. And we'll just turn off the template from the previous example. We don't need that. And so same thing here. I've got the same geometry setup, some UVs. I'm getting the world position, and we'll look at that. Getting the world position in that UV, and then same thing as before, using my HDA to get the in this case, actually we'll just put it back to float for now, so we'll stick that in here and preview that. And then let's template this so that we can see, yeah, float. So now you can see as the flame density passes by the surface that we are sampling its values to the surface using this basic setup. You can also get velocity. So right now we're not looking at velocity, so let's look at that. So as velocity passes by, you get that. Since you can use a lot of the COP nodes now with VDBs, you can just use the basic multiply. They actually let you do it with VDBs now. So if I pipe that in here, and let's have a look at this. So if I pipe that in here, and I've got this one displayed, and then this one templated, you can see here I've got a mix of density and velocity. And that gives me more of the field I might want to use to affect my texture map or trigger some other effects, because it lines up more with the visual density, but still has the values of the velocity vector in there. All right, and then this next setup, probably it's the same thing. This is just flame, so I can just go like this and make it small, and make it less crazy looking. This network is not that big though. All I'm doing here is extracting again the density and velocity, and then one thing I'm doing differently here is I'm bringing in a collision object. So let's look at where I'm getting that. So this is an HDA. You could just bring in your own test pig with a SOP import. So this is just basic geo, and then it gives you position, etc., using the same thing, HDA here to get pause, normals, etc. And so I've got the basic pig here, and then what I want to do is I want to be able to sample and push the texture around with velocity. But the issue there is that with this setup, and I'll show some other setups where it's not an issue, they're more complicated, but in this setup I've hidden the UV. So instead of having, let's just pipe the pig straight in here, we'll get the actual, we'll get the actual base color, and just put that into, no, wrong one. Let's just add a preview material here. So preview material, and we'll just put in the geo here, and we'll put in the standard base color that comes with the pig. So this is our basic pig, and the seams are right here. You can't see with the map right now, but if I'm going to flow any VDB past this and push these pixel values around using a flow map, they're going to go across the seams, and that's an issue with this this setup. There are ways around it, but I'm not using that in this example. I want to keep it simple. So instead, what I did is I made another UV and hid it under the chin. I probably should have put it back here, but it's fine for this example. So the UV map that comes with the pig looks like this. Sorry, this is the one where I hit it under the chin, and the standard one looks like, where is our UV here? There we go. Just grab our UV and stick that in there. So there you go. That's the standard UV that comes with the pig. And then what I did is I made another one that hides the seam behind the ears and under the chin. See that? There's the seam. And that way you have a contiguous area here to, as this flame passes by, to push the pixels around, and you won't notice the overlap except to the sides or back here. But obviously, you do a better job of hiding it than I am with a better UV setup. So let's look at how this all works. So basically I've got the pig, and I've got my my flame down here. So let's start at the beginning. So I've got my flame coming up, and I want to be able to sample that flame as it passes by the pig. So first thing I do is, or did, was move the pig so it's with the transform node so that it's above the flame here, and created some new UVs to hide the seam, which I just covered. And then I also made a VDB for the surface here. So here is the surface we're going to use for colliding, and then here is the creating a new UV called UV2, which we'll use to push our velocity and pixels around. So here again we get our world position map, and now this one's a little different, V to UV. This is getting position and normal, so this isn't the same as the other HDA which I showed before in terms of sampling. This is sampling the velocity vectors passing by, and then getting their their tangent relative to the surface and UVs to be able to create a map with that. And to make that clear here, we'll just pipe that straight into our pig as its texture. And so you can see here that it's not lining up, and that's because the this is not using the same UV setup. We have to, it actually gets converted. So let's look at here where I just do a UV sample and go sample that UV back into the other one. So all this is doing is saying take the original UV and then texture map that back in. So now you can see this velocity from the smoke passing by is being transferred to the UV direction on the surface. So I'm not using that for anything yet, but we will. And so a couple other things here is, well, let's just look at what this does. So I take that that map and then I put it in a basic flow block here, and I just add the V to the V that's being passed through, so it cumulatively adds up. So let's look at that flow map here. So you can see here that that's gradually building up, and same thing, I need to put that because this is using the UV2, not the original UV, so I need to do that transfer back to that map. So let's have a look at that. And so here you can see that as I push this around, it will push the texture around in the pig. And again, I should have done a better job of hiding this seam somewhere else, but you can see I am transferring the velocity to the surface UVs that are then used as velocity here in the flow block, so that that pushes the texture around, which is being piped in. The original pig texture is being pushed around with this velocity UV map. I scattered some points, so basically made, let me see here if I can do up, let me see here. Yeah, let's just look at our up. So basically created some up vectors, and that is not a great way to see up, so let's do it this way instead. And let's do vector. So there's the ups that I created, right? So that will orient, that'll be the beginning orient of our stamps. This is my own custom tool, and the reason why I had to make my own is that I needed to stamp in 3D space, and I also needed the stamps to stamp across UV seams and not be an issue. So by stamping in 3D space, I don't have that issue. So what I'm bringing in is a basic arrow here, and then for each point, so you can see here, we scatter points here. For each one of these points, it's going to be oriented by the up, and then the direction of these arrows is being driven by this this map, this VDUV map. So that will orient the arrows, and then I colored it with that same map. And so let's have a look at what that does by piping that into our result here. So you can see here that this is stamping arrows on the surface. They're pointing in the direction of the flow on the surface, and that flow is getting its velocity from the nearby VDB using this HDA here. And then when we combine it all together, it's a little slow, sorry. Now we have the flow pushing the texture around, and we also have it directing the stamps, the projected stamps onto the surface. One other thing I did was I also took the, I forgot to mention, I also took the, VDB surface for collision and put that into the flame. So you can see here that the smoke is also colliding with the surface around the pig, which obviously is a lot better having it flow along the surface if you're going to transfer that to the near UV world positions.